the spare papers.
Have you got a spare set of papers that Rob can have? Thank you, Joe. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet of Portsmouth City Council. Just a few procedural things to draw attention to before the meeting starts. I, Councillor Steve Pitt, Deputy Leader of the Council, Cabinet Member for Culture and City Development. Just a few bits and pieces. Fire alarm. If it does sound, please exit the building without using the lifts. Please use the stairwells and assemble by Queen Victoria's statue as usual. In order to comply with the Guildhall Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who's signed in needs to sign out at the end of today's meeting when leaving the building. Today's meeting will be live web streamed. Draw people's attention to the fact that there is a fixed camera at the rear of the room and recording will be on the Council's website. The camera will mainly capture the backs of anyone making deputations, which actually may not happen today, but there will be some footage of them as they approach and leave the table. Microphones are located and people entering or leaving the room whilst the meeting is in progress. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those explicitly stating that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone remember to use the microphones provided, and most importantly, can you please remember to turn them off when you finish speaking so that they work properly. Excellent, thank you very much and welcome everyone. I have apologies for absence for the Leader of the Council who needs to be elsewhere on Council business, and Councillor Lee Hunt, the Cabinet Member for Community Safety, who is on annual leave. Before we do declarations of interest, I think it would be useful to go around the table and say who everyone is, starting with
Councillor Rob Wood, Cabinet Member for Children and Families.
Councillor Lindstag, Councillor for Baffins Ward.
Dave Ashmore, I'm Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change.
Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Education.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing.
Tom Wood, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Matthew Williamson, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Judith, just in case you speak, we might as well introduce you now.
Judith Smythe, Labour Councillor for St Jude Ward, and I missed all the trainings and I want to catch up through this and may have perhaps a question, but okay, otherwise I have no other thing to say.
Absolutely fine, thank you for coming.
Tristan Samuels, Director Regeneration.
Meredith Hughes, Assistant Director, Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
David Williams, Chief Executive.
Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Kieran Laven, Planning Solicitor.
Sophie Mallon, Deputy City Solicitor.
Julian Pike, Deputy Director of Finance.
Joanne Wildsmith, Democratic Services.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the meeting. Any declarations of interest, members? No, none. Okay, so we are here mainly today, and this is an additional meeting of the Cabinet, but because this is a pressing issue and one that's causing a number of delays in normal council processes, it was felt that it was important enough to, at the earliest opportunity, bring the report forward, which is why we've done that and why we're here today. So item 3 on the agenda is the nitrate neutrality mitigation, measures to enable new housing development, and who is introducing? Ian Maguire, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Members, I believe the nitrate neutrality problem is relatively well known to all, so I won't labour this matter. I can probably do little better than really drawing you to the first couple of pages, the purposes and the recommendations of this report. As we said in the report, the purpose is to give you an update on the progress that is being made both within the organisation and with our partners. The key output of this report is to bring you up to speed where we are with an interim mitigation strategy to create a nitrate bank of nitrate credit, allowing the recommencement of the grant of planning permissions. We also have included within here some signposting to the ongoing work we're doing with push authorities and other partners outside the local authority family for a longer term solution. Looking at the recommendations then, to unpack that, the recommendations are on page 2. They are, as you will note, to note what is going on rather than any actual fundamental decisions today. Ongoing progress, as mentioned. The key improvement that's made is a joint piece of work between your housing team and your planning team to identify that existing planned improvements to water efficiency in the housing stock and potential acceleration of that can create nitrate credits by reducing the amount of water that is coming out of existing homes in Portsmouth in perpetuity, and it enables us to have some headroom to build new homes in Portsmouth. That process has been led by my colleagues in housing, your housing team, to ensure we can properly understand and quantify the benefits that work is occurring. That is the key output of the nitrate bank. We also have some nuances in that we can recognise some empty buildings that are currently being held empty or being created as empty buildings as part of the redevelopment proposals, again largely within the HRA housing stock, which helps forward plan and pump prime that nitrate bank. We can accommodate those as well without interfering with the deliverability of the council's own regeneration strategies. We've also asked members in this report to note the ongoing work. I won't go through everything that's on page 2 in there, but as you can see, we're talking to government agencies, the university and the water companies, as well as our partners wider in Push, to identify future opportunities for a long-term strategy beyond this interim one. In short conclusion, therefore, this interim strategy takes advantage of being able to control our own housing stock without any cost to our housing tenants to improve their water efficiency, which also has supplementary benefits for carbon and other environmental gain, to give us headroom to provide new housing through a system that we will now be moving on to create, fully quantifying that up and creating a deliverable system to enable the recommencement of the granted plan permissions for a period of time. So until we've done the final quantification, I can't be more specific than that, but it's certainly more than a year, could be 2 or even 3 years to go through a reasonable number of interventions in the housing stock while we have an opportunity to work on a broader sub-regional basis on a longer-term mitigation strategy. I commend the report to you and I would like to thank all the colleagues I've worked with across the council who produced this. It's very much been a joint effort amongst a number of different directorates, and all the recommendations are laid out on page 2.
Thank you, Ian, and at this early stage in the meeting, thank you very much to everyone who's taken part in making this happen, because it's been a huge piece of work with an awful lot of uncertainty and mixed messages coming out of various bits of government, and the fact that we've got here in pretty good time is a testament to the effort, the amount of work that's gone in. So thank you all very much for that. I've got some comments, but I'll reserve those for later. Cabinet members, any questions? Rob?
Really, this is just on behalf of residents about being asked a couple of things about this. The first thing is the two houses, Horatio and Leamington, do they factor in it? In other words, when they potentially might be revamped with the account? That's question 1. Question 2 is other planning issues. So currently now there's people going out there say because it's held up with the specific ones that are affected by nitrates, is that holding up other planning applications?
Thank you. So the Horatio and Leamington house redevelopment work, yes, what we're doing is recognising that their vacancy has created stock, so that goes into the bank. But of course we must also recognise we need to draw down from that nitrate bank when we redevelop those sites. So that's being factored in, which is why I can't give you a specific end date for the interim strategy, because we want to make sure we take the benefits in there. But it has pump prime it, because obviously the incremental work that the housing maintenance team is doing to make water efficiency improvements happens month on month on month, so it takes a while to build up what we need. So having those 2 blocks to give us a chunk of benefit, a chunk of water reduction right at the beginning of the process is very beneficial, but we will of course be paying those back to ensure that their redevelopment is not in any way undermined. The second question regarding other planning issues, so certainly there are a number of planning applications held up purely on the nitrates issue, and many further applications that have nitrate issues and other planning matters. All the other planning work continues, so the case officers and the planning service are working with developers to ensure we get applications to a point where the only outstanding matter is the nitrate question. So when we can formally launch an interim mitigation strategy, we can then grant plan permission with confidence that it is a sustainable and approvable scheme. So they're all continuing at the moment.
Can I ask a very specific, are other planning applications being delayed currently? That's what I'm asking.
So applications with residential overnight stays, hotels, HMOs, residential dwellings are being delayed while we resolve this matter, but we are taking this time to resolve all the other, as you can imagine, there's no perfect applications that come in, to make the value-added improvements to them while we resolve this one issue. Broader, purely commercial activity applications are undelayed by this process.
Thank you, Rob. Darren?
Thanks, Steve. One question and a few comments, if I may. Question is to legal people. Does this ruling still apply, because it's a European Court of Justice ruling, does this ruling still apply if we leave the European Union without a deal on the 31st of October?
Yes, it will. Currently the plan is to leave the European Union but leave the European law intact for the near future.
So then becomes something that the government will deal with. Okay. A few comments, if I may, Steve. This is a mess. This whole situation is a complete mess that is not of our making. We're being told by governments that we have to focus on things that are controllable, things we can control, even though most of the problem comes from agricultural land, which is a bit mad. But we're focusing on things, I think, in a planned and coherent way, unlike the mess that we have faced. Rob's point is accurate. There are some affordable housing that I am very keen to see developed that isn't happening because of this, and that is wrong, because we need homes Portsmouth people can afford. There are three things in particular I'm impressed with. The first is everybody is working together, unlike central government who can't seem to talk to each other about this. So it's not just the housing stock, it's also leisure land, it's also other land that we can control across the piece. And it's good that we as a council are working coherently when government seems occupied by other things. The second thing is what this will do. This will mean that there will be some homes that people can afford in this city. That is good. And I'm delighted that we've been able to find a way that will deal with that. And the third bit is the work that needs to be done on a regional basis. We're not alone. There's lots of other regional authorities that have lots of farming land, and it might be quite useful to work with them. But I'm delighted we've come up with a coherent strategy, unlike the mess we've inherited. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Darren. Lynn?
Is it true that it takes 30 years for the nitrates to percolate through the rocks and get into the water supply? Because if that's the case, how long, I'm looking beyond this, and looking what happens when we run out of credits. I mean, is there something else in place? How long will it take before the water supply is relatively clear? I mean, not relatively clear, but you know what I mean, significantly less nitrates in it.
Thank you. Yes, so as has been mentioned, agriculture is the largest culprit, if you will, placing nitrates from both animal feces and fertiliser on the system. In a chalk aquifer situation, yes, it can take a number of decades, 20 years, 30 years. Obviously, it will vary enormously depending how it comes forward. Work has been carrying on for a number of years to improve that already, but it will take a long time to come out, to wash out, if you will, into the system. That's why the focus for certainly this interim strategy, and indeed a big chunk of the next strategy as well, is about nitrate neutrality, so that new development can demonstrate neutrality, mitigation for what it puts in, which is a minority. Obviously government, DEFRA and the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government will be working together to look at that broader question. Indeed, we met with them earlier this week as a push to talk to MHCLG, Natural England and the Environment Agency about what next steps they're taking, and they have reassured us that it is on the government's radar and they are looking at these matters.
So they are actually listening, for once?
We are talking to them.
Good answer, Ian. Any other Cabinet members? A question for Ian at all? No. Judith? Can you put your mic on, please? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Rising partly from the questions that have just been asked, first of all, can the Cabinet guarantee that social or council or affordable housing won't be in any way sacrificed in order to allow private developers to go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second one is, I gather from the report that farmers are responsible for 80% of this. What do we know that...
About 85.
85, thank you. It's still bad. Can we obtain assurance that something is really being done about that and up the pressure on central government to make sure that is being addressed?
So I think, as Ian just said, there has been a strategy in place for a number of years. I was at a meeting with David in Southampton last month where we had an FU there, National Farmers Union, and because it takes so long for the nitrate to make its way through the chalk, the actions that they've been making for decades to reduce the amount of nitrates in fertiliser, treat land differently, takes a long time to come through. So it's already reducing in that way.
Okay.
Obviously that will be part of a conversation that the NFU have to have with DEFRA, but whether they can do more. But nitrate is reducing from agricultural land, and that will happen over time, but it takes a long time, which is why they've put the immediate focus on planning authorities not adding to the problem, and that's why the neutrality bit is so important, because if we're not adding to it, it will then reduce over a period of time. Ian, any extra comments on that?
Steve, can I just add? I mean, that's one of the reasons why, unusually, we've put a recommendation, the last recommendation there, about continuing to lobby and keep pressure on, because a number of the agencies fall under DEFRA, and if you think of the difference in remit between agencies like Natural England and the farming industry and so forth, there's a lot of internal tension within the ambit of that one government department, and I think it's really important that we work with our colleagues on a sub-regional basis and use agencies like the LGA and so forth to keep the pressure on, because whilst it's a major issue for us, it's not an issue at the moment across the whole of the United Kingdom. So from DEFRA's point of view, it's a relatively small localised issue, and unless we maintain that lobbying pressure, there's a very real danger that something else will become the more important issue.
Thanks, David, and it's actually why we've been saying to the developers, don't lobby us. We are effectively developers as well, because we want to build social and affordable housing. So we are lined up facing government with you, but the more pressure that the developers put on, the better, particularly housing associations. We need building to happen in the south of England, and we need it not to be held up by this. The extent to which this is not joined up by government is we have a letter from the Environment Agency saying the existing licences held by Southern Water are absolutely fine and there is capacity within that for nitrates, and Natural England take an entirely contrary view, and both the bits of the same government department. So it is an absolute nonsense, all of this. What we need to do, though, is prove that we can get on with things while they sort their own mess out.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. Is there any mitigation that can be offered by engineering new housing developments in a different way to eliminate the nitrates at an earlier part of the journey?
Yes, there is. Ian, trying to pick that up?
Yes, certainly the solution, both short-term and long-term, is a combination of reducing input and managing output. So as an absolute minimum, improved water efficiency will be a requirement for all new development, taking it down to the best available technology amounts of water, 110 litres per person per day. Then whether there is a world of nitrogen stripping on a local level above that is part of the ongoing longer term consideration. All sorts of cost implications, etc., and practical implications will need to be reviewed, of course.
Okay, thank you. And just the last question, I've had one or two discussions with people who are becoming concerned about the quality of drinking water here. Is that in any way related to this issue? And second of all, are Portsmouth water companies satisfied that their standards remain as high as ever for drinking water?
It's not related to these discussions at all, but we would be happy to ask those questions, but I'm not aware of any concerns that have been raised directly with the council. Is anyone? No. Okay. Councillor Matthew.
So we're just for the public really, everybody's satisfied with the drinking water, everybody's drinking it, and it's all not affected by this at all. We can say that to public who ask without any
No one's asked any of
caveats?
us, but obviously
No.
they have asked you. Tristan?
Just to say, we have met with Portsmouth Water on the issue. They're quite confident with the quality of their water, and where they do have, just on the nitrates issue, nothing to do with the drinking quality, they're very happy with their drinking quality. They are, where they even have an excess of nitrates coming from specific wells, they blend their water to reduce that in the output that comes to the tenants in the city.
That's really reassuring. Thank you very much, and I'll thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Matt?
Apologies for being slightly out of time there. Just a couple of questions. I think it'd be really useful. Could you just clarify which authorities are covered by this issue in our local area? And the other thing is, obviously in the reports, the supplementary planning document that was installed in the Poole Harbour area is mentioned. How useful has that been to developing the strategy in this part of the Solents?
Ian?
Thank you. So the authorities affected are, in effect, everyone within a water catchment. So it's obviously all the coastal authorities in South Hampshire, and as you go in all the way up into Winchester and New Forest, part of the district flows down one side, the other flows down into the Solent. So it is pretty much the whole of South Hampshire involved in that work and sitting as part of the partnership for South Hampshire, accordingly an ideal body to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you. I'm minded by the fact that there are rather a lot of officers sat at the table. Meredith, did you have any comments that you wanted to make about the housing side of things?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Legal colleagues, anything to add? Jules, any finance implications?
No, they're set out in the report, and there's nothing of significance.
Okay. I just didn't want anyone to have made the journey expecting to speak and not having spoken. Any other comments from members of the Cabinet? Judith, any other questions you wanted to ask? Again, just to reiterate, the amount of work that's gone into this and the urgency that's been placed on it by the teams, also bearing in mind that we've been in a period of transition in the planning department with Ian coming into post. The work that started under Paul was important, and Ian's accelerated that to this conclusion. The reason that we're noting all of these things is it needs to be clear that the Cabinet is happy with the proposed approach, so that the teams can then begin to talk to individual developers, as Ian said, once they've got to the point where it's only nitrates that's the issue, and do those appropriate assessments for each and every application to make sure that we know where we are. So there was a need for this to be noted here, even though we're not actually making a decision as such. It was still important to air it in a public meeting for opposition members to have the opportunity to come along if they wanted to, for members of the public to attend who haven't, and also for press colleagues to be present who aren't. But never mind, the opportunity was there, and that's what we plan to do. So we have recommendations in front of us for noting. Are we happy? Oh, Matt?
I just wanted to say one more thing. I've had a few discussions with residents about this, and so some people obviously believe that the city can't handle any more development at all, but their particular ire is towards private development. So I think it's really important to pull out of this that this isn't just stopping private development, this is stopping all development, including social housing in the city. It's also, it's actually stated in the report about some of the ways we're having to effectively work with our assets to get things moving in terms of our specialist housing that we have for people in the city for who have social care needs, and the way we're having to move along with that in a step-by-step basis, and it's actually putting a brake on what we're able to do. So I think it's just really important to say this doesn't just have impacts on, endless private developments where people think there's too many places in the city. This is having impact on development for people who are vulnerable in the city, and we can't move forward. We have to do it in a very systematic way now, which may mean it takes longer. But if we did nothing, if we had no strategy, that just wouldn't happen at all. So that's why this is such a critical issue, and I'm really thank everyone who's been involved in getting this plan in place, and obviously best of luck with everyone who's who's working with partners to come up with an ongoing mitigation that we can all work with.
Thank you, Rod. Did you? No, you weren't. Okay. Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, actually, just before we come to the recommendations, that one of the things that came very clearly, loud and clear out of the meeting that David and I had with partners over in Southampton was that from the developer's perspective, having what's called a Grampian condition only as the strategy, which means basically we'll grant you permission but you can't move anybody into it until we've got mitigation in place, whilst offering no mitigation that they can actually access, is a complete waste of everyone's time. And you're quite right, Matt, that would apply to the City Council and the things we want to do as much as it would to a developer. So it's a really important piece of joined up thinking. We've got some key developments we know are being brought forward by private developers that that will be significant for the city, but we've also got some significant things around your portfolio, and I know Darren's as well, that we do wish to be moving forward, because as Darren always likes to say, we need local homes for local people that are affordable, and that's really important. So the recommendations are in front of us, colleagues. Are we happy to accept them?
Agreed.
Okay, that's all agreed. Thank you very much to officers for being present today. Thank you, Judith, for attending.